Turn back to our guest, Behnam Ben Taleblu, Senior Fellow for the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, joining us from Washington, D.C. So, you heard what Ariel had to say right now. I mean, what power does the Iranian president even have? Pezeshkian promised no radical changes to Iran's Shiite theocracy in his campaign, and he has long held Iranian Supreme Leader Khamenei as the final arbiter of all matters in the state of the country. So what kind of change in stance can we expect from him, if anything?
It's a great question, and the vast majority of the changes that you may expect to see are going to be stylistic and rhetorical changes rather than substantive changes. And in areas of concern for Washington or Israel or many other actors, particularly when it comes to the regime's nuclear program, or allegedly a lot of Pezeshkian's comments about the JCPOA, about the Financial Action Task Force, and about Iran's relations with the outside world, Pezeshkian knows that he is checked legally, politically, socially, formally, and informally by much more important political and security organs like the Office of the Supreme Leader, like the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and like the Supreme National Security Council, which set and direct the Islamic Republic of Iran's foreign and security policy. So he's not there to change that. He's there to implement their will better. And if you had to ask me why Pezeshkian was permitted by Iran's security establishment to get so far, to be narrowed down from the first 80 candidates, then to the 6 candidates, then to the 2 candidates, and now to the president-elect, quote unquote, of the Islamic Republic, it's simply because this person, by simply being able to offer stylistic changes, perhaps may be able to elicit, a la Zarif in the past, substantive changes from the West. And I think that's fundamentally the regime's goal here, just to put some more lipstick on a pig, to get more sanctions relief, to continue to limp along, to continue to provide the regime with a bit more stability on the international front, while continuing to cleave the opposition and diaspora at home at a very sensitive time. So that's why I think the regime played the musical chairs game that it did with Pezeshkian.
Yet, interestingly, we still see international media referring to Pezeshkian as a reformist. Now, Hezbollah has been stepping up its attacks, Behnam, against Israel, and the terror group claims that it's going to be laying down its arms once there's a ceasefire. But at this point, is it within Hezbollah's interest to actually stop this campaign?
Great to be with you, Natasha. Excellent question, because Hezbollah has shown that out of all of Iran's proxies, in terms of what the regime calls the acts of resistance, this group has the capability and intent to continue to engage in incremental or graduated escalation, trying to change Israel's deterrence equation, literally starting on October 8th. They've escalated with different targets, they've escalated with different weapons, and they've escalated against entirely different geographies. And what the regime and Hezbollah together are trying to do is to use military means to force a political end that they prefer. And it would set a very dangerous precedent for Hezbollah to be able to cement what it's doing in the north as just another new normal in the Middle East. And that's something, as you've seen recently in the segment before, no Israeli military or political official can afford to ignore.
Now, Iran has repeatedly said that it will get heavily involved if Israel chooses to launch a ground operation in Lebanon in response to Hezbollah's attacks. But should we be taking Iran's word for it?
In a post-April 13, post-April 14 world, where after a 4-decade-plus shadow war between Iran and Israel, the Islamic Republic overtly, directly, and with weapons of war did indeed attempt to strike the only Jewish and democratic state in the Middle East. Even a non-zero chance, a number that is slightly larger than zero, like 1 or 2 or even 3%, should not be dismissed easily. So while Iran has the capability to use other Arab proxies to bail out its most important proxy, while it has other standoff weaponry that it's proliferated to other groups in the region, there is indeed a chance that it can get directly involved, particularly because Hezbollah serves as the frontline defense as a potential deterrent against an attack on Iran's nuclear program, which the regime would treat as existential.
Right. Paint us a picture of what you think a larger scale war would look like between Israel and Hezbollah, especially if Iran were to get involved more directly. We know that Hezbollah has a weapons arsenal of over 130 to 150,000 rockets and missiles that can deeply penetrate into Israeli territory. But Israel also has a very strong defense system, the Iron Dome, multiple defense systems that it's been using to protect itself from rocket fire. Still, obviously, there are deep concerns as to what a larger-scale war could look like.
This is something that the adversary, meaning Iran, Hezbollah, the axis of resistance, what have you, is able to weaponize quite well, which is the image of war, the cost of war. It's not that Israel can't necessarily win a war. It's about the cost that war would impose on Israel, on Israeli civilians, on Israeli economy, and on Israeli security. But nonetheless, in a post-October 7 world, as you see quite literally day to day in the news coming out of Israel, those costs are being revised. Those estimates, that risk tolerance is being changed, given based on the capabilities that a much lesser group like Hamas had and was able to inflict on Israel South. That's not a reality I think Israelis are willing to live with on their northern border with a group that has much more capability. And as you mentioned, some say up to 200,000 mortars, IRAMs, rockets, missiles, drones, anti-tank weapons, and what have you, and many of which the regime is helping Hezbollah move to PGMs or precision-guided munitions. So in terms of quantity, there's the challenge against Israel's layered air and missile defenses, which is literally the best in the region. But there's also a qualitative challenge that Iran is helping Hezbollah refine, which is like having a knife against the neck of the Jewish state, and then slowly sharpening that over time.
All right, Behnam, we're going to be back with you shortly. We're going out for a quick commercial break, but stick with us here on i24 News. This is The Rundown. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and we have a lot more coming up, so don't go anywhere.